Hi there, Randy Green here. Let us continue. And I'm going to blast my way through this because I don't want to do more days than this day. It is the way when you work with the other realities. You only have got one day to do things within a specific type of energy. And then the kaleidoscope shifts its position. And then tomorrow, when it's another day, we have another set of energies and another type of reality, another racial grid work levels that are activated and other nodal points that have come into play. So let us work a little bit with, let's begin with Carl Gustav Jung on the Kundalini, which I just looked up some of the things on the internet. You can look up a lot of stuff on your own. I've got specific things I want to put in here because I want to work with different angles of this. And I'm just using these, the word of Carl Gustav Jung, which I studied, which gave me a different insight. As you recall from the first podcast, I worked with the Beta material. I worked with the Blavatsky material. I also worked with Charles Charles W. Leadbeater, and his version of the chakra system that were part of the Theosophical grew out. I worked with Rudolf Steiner's version of it. I looked into all the different theosophical ideas. What we call the Beta material is what we call neo-theosophical. It is the next generation of it. And she deviated from Annie Besant and the C.W. Leadbeater that were working on the Indian branch, so to speak. And they thought that they had found the reincarnation of Maitreya in India, and were working with him. And then just to discover that he was not. And that was they were more what we call the theosophical groups in India were more under control of certain groups within the Nagas, because the Nagas are not just one branch. They are different groups. They're all depending on that type of genetics that they have got. And the one I am here working with are the ones that have Pleiadian genetics in them. So they technically had the ability to have human form, which is why they're connected to different specimens within the civilization, in our civilization, that have Pleiadian genetics. And they are connected under what are called the Maya Pleiadians. I talk about this in my book, The Souls of Humanity. And that's that group of Pleiadians that came from the Pleiadian constellation of that star we call Maya. So it's nothing to do with the Mayans in South America. That's a whole other group that were connected to the D10 collective and Thoth and some of the fallen angelic reptoid races over there. But there are, of course, similarities in the genetic makeup. So if you can look on archive.org. There you can find the Psychology of Kundalini Yoga by Carl Gustav Jung for free, and look up the book yourself, because that's the beauty of these ancient books. Ancient. It's from 1932. You can find them for free. You don't have to pay anything. They are uploaded as PDF as part of archive.org. There's a lot of brilliant information on that portal where you can look up these old texts and read it as they were in book form. You can buy it in book form as well if you like to have it on your shelf, but this is the possibilities we have today. There's so much information out there. You just need to know where to look for it and not get trapped in. I was looking into academia.edu that kind of had a PDF of it as well. And they wanted to, first and foremost, I had to get access via either Google account or Facebook account. And then when I got in, I had to download 20 fucking PDF files of something to get going. I just kind of, forget it, because I can get it on archive.org. But there was probably a reason why I need to go through that little detour for reasons and purposes, so that I could tell you, just do archive.org. Don't get ensnared with all of these that want something to give something. That is important. Okay. So, the book that I'm referring to by Carl Gustav Jung is technically lectures he was holding in 1932 based upon some of the things that he had experienced with his clients as he was working with the Jungian method of the subconscious and the collective consciousness, which you can read his own books. And they are heavy heavy stuff to go through. I have read them and I forgot most of it. And to be honest, where I got most insights were reading there are different biologies and biographies of made by other authors, having talked to Jung, have talked with him of his childhood and what he experienced and the background of why he created the teachings the way he did. And they gave more to me than what he's trying in his books. He is, of course, trying to create a system of thought as I am. And you would say the same thing about me. It's so complicated, Randy. But that's because there is one thing when we talk about it as our own personal experiences, which I'm trying to do with the different narratives. And then trying to claim some kind of professional, be accredited as a system of thought that is valid enough to work with on a general level. These are two different modalities of sharing information. And if I always just shared it as part of personal experiences, it cannot be taken scientifically. It's not a validification of this scientific method. You have to put it into some kind of system of thought that plays by a specific rule book. Whereas when you're talking about it freestyle, you're playing by another rule book. And Jung had a lot of lectures where he was doing this freestyle, and he had you can find on YouTube, you can find where he talks, you can find these different stories, biographies that have been made by others. And I had one ask me, which one is it? And I was, I don't know. I read it 20 years ago. So the oldest version of the earliest one, probably. And then it's been made many others later on. So I can't remember the author. It was a female that wrote it. That's all I can recall. But it left a huge impact on me, because there Jung explained how he as a child grew up with his sister who was highly spiritual. And he grew up in the times of spiritism, not spirituality, but spiritism, working with ghosts, working with the crossovers that had remained lingering on, giving information and trying to connect two different humans, which I today will call something else. But at the time, that's one of what we call the astral plane remnants or issues with the astral plane. And the distortion level is that when people cross over, they linger on there. It becomes limbo for a lot of energy system that doesn't know where to go. And that's part of the issues with the chakra system and what's been done to it, and the modification of the human genome, as well as the modification of the human vessel, that from being an energy form and a physical form that was supposed to transform energies here in the outskirts of our sector, as I talk about with the transformative energy system, so we could undo the effects of the timeline event, it became an enslavement body that were not supposed to transform anything other than just maintaining its self-reproduction rate in a manner where it would continue to produce different physical forms from where these different hijacking groups could come in and do their different types of genetic experimentation. And it's ongoing to this day. Don't get all kind of, it's something that happened in the past. It's still happening. And that's the problem with the engineering we have of our physical form. So therefore, in our understanding of the opposition dynamics, we have the original transformative energy system, the original purpose of it, which is what we need to return to. And then we have the current version of it and all the distortion, prohibiting technologies, shutdown mechanisms, and whatever you can think of alien inserted technology that prevents you from activating and regaining your true consciousness potentials. And once you get there, then you realize that, I just begun the work, because then I need to resume to the original purpose of this construction as I always refer to him as my brother. He's not my brother, but that's just the easy thing. Instead of saying, that version of one of the members of my lineage that used to be part of a specific group of the D14 collective that went into the holographic metaverse projects inside this reality. After the strife, where we created a segment inside this solar system under this universal structure we call the less progressive reality or universal structure, where we imbued it with different types of third cycle technologies, from where it would be able to upgrade the previous civilizations that did not make it in the previous universal cycle. That was agreed upon, and this was an experiment. I talk about that in the Souls of Humanity. And he was orchestrating some of the sectorial projects within the Syrian system, and he therefore is often referred to as the Syrian. But he originally, in this, the LPU construction and the LPU version of this sector, under the new technology imbued universal cycle, under the holographic metaverse and the D14 collective, he became the operating agent, or the team leader, if you like, of some of the D13 collective humanoids, which meant he imbued himself with different forms of humanoid genetics, which allowed him to operate in the D13 collective. From that one on, he became the leader of what we call Vigar, that the stations there, but he also operated under some of the science projects in the Syrian system. So he was a Syrian Vigar because he had different leading positions, both in the Vigar system under the D13 collective, as well as in the Syrian system under the D14 collective. Due to that malfunctioning, due to that collapse, and due to the use of the third cycle technologies, he went to the councils and asked them to be allowed to create different pocket realities, from where he would try to work directly with the energies of the previous universal cycle to assist the ones that were to operate themselves within this universal cycle, but needed some kind of locale, some kind of field within field, spheres within spheres, a reality within reality, where they could be who they were and then upgrade what they didn't succeed to do the last time around, but then do the upgrading via these pocket realities into using the third cycle energies, using the previous universal cycle energies, using different forms of technologies, from where they could upgrade slowly but surely into becoming part of the D14 collective. That was allowed and admitted to him. I was resisting that in the councils and said, no, that's a bad idea, because then you take the energies of the previous universal cycle and put it into this one, and that is opening a door from where more energy can be infused. It's just a matter of things go wrong, as it were, in the Syrian projects that led to the timeline event. And then this sector, that LPU, will be completely consumed by the energies of the previous universal cycle, which is the issue we have today. Okay, so that's the story about that guy. And he goes on in different names, and it doesn't matter, because the names are just, that's a kind of a signifier that tells you which project they are part of, because we don't have names, we have functions, and our functions often becomes our names, as I talk about. This is a different language. We're not called this or that. If you hear some weird sound, you think it's a name. It is actually an understanding of some kind of functionality. When we talk about Enki and Enlil, Ki is the understanding of that project, the Mesopotamian project, which is often translated into Earth. But that's their quote unquote name for that project, Ki, the Ki project. And then you have N, that goes with a verbalization, a different unfolding of the word Anu as a lesser version of that one. Anyways, I'm not going to go into all of these details of how to decode the different names, but this is so you understand there are no names, so don't get confused. When you get names, you're getting functions, and it is up for you to use that double awareness and understanding complex information systems to decode what is that person's function, as in a general or a soldier or a warrior or a scientist or a judge, whatever. These are not names, these are functions. So that's how that is to be understood. Okay, so to go back, I kind of got completely deviated there, but it's part of all the history that we're dealing with here. So you understand that all of this genetic engineering, modification, whatever's going on, it's nothing new. That's the sad story of this structure, this sector, which I also explain in my perception logs, as well as in my 6 books, as well as in all of my classes, where you get that context, that understanding, and then how can you work with it? How do you take that information and put it into something you can actually work with? Because when you do understand that, it's all about undoing the effects of the timeline event, or undoing the effects of the fall of Atlantis, transforming your energy system into its correct version that we are now dealing with, getting out of the enslavement configuration configuration into the original transformative configuration. And their understanding, we're dealing with a whole sector that blew to hell because of stupid experimentation of previous universal cycle energies, which puts us back in time, which reverses us to be able to do what we were already completing in the previous universal cycles. You understand that those of us who have that kind of ability to remember who and what we were, we have that, what you could say, we have, we have something that makes it easier for us to do so. An advantage, that's the word. We have an advantage because we already done it. We remember we've done it already. And then we go to the next phase of transforming whatever was the effect of the timeline event. And that's still a task all have to do on this planet. We're not done yet. We have barely begun. And that's, even though everything's collapsing around us, those of us who are doing this, we are then saying, well, actually, in a way, it's perhaps it's not good, but it does bring about what we could call some of the original understandings, the original dynamics, and it creates an activation potentials because our entire system is in its completion cycle. And there are certain laws, certain dynamics that kick in once that happens. And that is where either you climb out of the mud hole or you go with a mudslide into the abyss. So that's the dynamic. So that's the incentive for us to do this. So this is not, it's no longer about, oh yeah, I'm going to get immortal or whatever has been put into why to do the chakra teachings. This is all about understanding that you are a human that is connected to the reality field you're part of. And your primary goal is to transform the holographic units back into their flexibility of being transformative so they can transmute and transcend and move beyond this reality. And in that, you develop your consciousness potentials to become the highest version of what is potentially yours to become, all depending on which collective you originated from. The D10 collective have certain things they need to achieve. The D4 collective has certain things they need to achieve. The avians. The D5 collective, the Syrians, have something they need to achieve, onward and so forth. Okay, so that's within that. And once you have reached that and tick the boxes of what you're supposed to achieve in this system, then you can move to the next levels and become more than that. And that's also part of the journey. So when we understand that in the psychology of Kundalini Yoga, and to go back to Jung and his childhood experiences, so we kind of understand that he grew up in a home where his sister was, she was a spiritist. She was in connection with the dead people. I see dead people. And things were happening. There's a lot of poltergeist activity, tables levitating, knocks on doors, weird cracks in the walls. He had series of weird dreams, which he didn't understand. I've had a series of weird dreams I don't understand. But he chose to work with this in a different manner than his mentor. He studied with Freud, and he clearly came to the conviction that Freud, aside from being high on cocaine, being a Jew, and being completely under some kind of father issue, dealing with a lot of sexual suppression and what have you. I'm not a fan of Freud. Jung twisted it in a different direction and talked about the subconscious, the collective subconscious, and the understanding of where Freud were dealing with being a Jew and all. He was dealing with the concept of God as the wrathful father figure, which he actually, I think, is spot on that one. But he was conflating his own issues with the psychology that he promoted, the whole kind of going with the primary instincts, the where you have the ego structure, and then you have the frontal lobe or the id that kind of goes with the high levels that you aspire to. So you see, it goes into all, whatever we're thinking about, it's the same idea. You have the primitive level, you have the current version of yourself, you have the one you need to aspire to, that is the best version of what a human can be. It doesn't matter which system you look into, it's all about that. In the older mythology, it's all about being made out of dirt, and you progress in this system to become more than just the animal human. And then if you do it well, you will get into the eternal realities, the heavens, the other side, whatever it is, mummifying your body. So it will be the vessel of that you can sail via that vessel into the other realities, which is part of the Egyptian mythology as well, until the soul is ready to let go, which is often portrayed as the ka, or the bird the avian, the middle domain, which is in alignment with the D4 avian collective of Egypt. There are all of these things fit together once you understand the different extraterrestrials that have been here and that have got stuck in this physical form under different enslavement programs, but also some of the ones that actually were actors and stakeholders in the original sector after the timeline event that then got hijacked, and they were pushed into different punishment forms, either in the fourth dimension or as part of ant bodies or inside this reality in lower lesser forms, being insects or birds or animals. These are punishment bodies. So you kind of begin to understand that the complexity of the world that you're a part of is really souls that are embedded into different physical forms, matter forms, from where they are stuck. And it's all about how do we transform these connection points that keeps us recirculating into different forms? How do we free ourselves of the wheel of life, the samsara? How do we activate the original energy system so we can dissolve our physical form, the connection field, that is the biofield, to the physical form, so we can lift ourselves into the vibrational field and the radiation fields, which are part of what the true construction of the soul that belongs to the middle domain, where the original civilizations used to exist. Okay, so now you got the background of that one. It doesn't matter what teaching system you're looking upon. They have different words, they have different languages, they are written over a different course of history, under different factions, under different groups, and they have different types of genetics, which is why we have these different types of teaching systems. So that's why the Nagas are showing partly Pleiadian, partly Sirian avian reptoid races that did have that reptoid genetics imbued into them as part of the D10 collective, because they collaborated with them at some point, and then they got in trouble, and then they lost their ability to have physical form. They were no longer allowed to be priests inside this reality. The original Bohemian priesthood were taken over by other groups, and then we had that group that technically are under the Baals or the D10 collective, and all of these different races that then came in and colonized this reality field some 12,000 years ago. And with that, they lost their original abilities, but they lingered on because they couldn't get out. So they became the pariahs, connecting to different specimens inside this reality as a symbiotic, connecting to these physical forms. And the reason why they underwent that punishment was because the Syrian Age were the ones that created the technologically enhanced genetics to begin with. They were part of that project where you take the original consciousness units and connects it to different types of technologies so it would be functional within their middle domain of the LPU. So that's what they did. And some of the hijacking groups then figure out that's a piece of technology we can use in our prohibiting technologies, which I talk about in the Souls of Humanity, as well as in the advanced clearing work, where I talk about the alien inserted technology, the Hara quadrant, the head quadrant, and the chest quadrant, and how these TGs were used to engineer and create different types of snakes, parasites, energetic snakes, from where these technologies could be connected, including what was seeded into the racial network and the racial grid work, which then created what we call elemental beings, which are some weird blobby, octopusy, gel-like creatures that are connecting the different cubes of the artificial fourth dimension to our reality. And we are in the middle of that via the TGs and inserted energetic parasites, again using the original ideas of how to transform the energy system via symbols, via holographic energy units coding, and via different forms of vibrations that comes from these cubes that are running sequences which alters the vibrational field into holding certain emotional patterns that becomes emotional patterns because they are tailoring or modifying the emotional contact, the enzymes of the molecular structure to unfold a certain type of electrochemical compounds that engineers a specific type of field in the vibrational field, clocks that one, and then links us up to what we understand as the distortion fields or the astral plane, if you like. So that was part of the astral barrier. Some of the technologies that were input into this system when the Draco took over, they engineered the frequency fence and the astral barrier, and via these two large fields connected that to our mental field and our radiation field and our vibrational field, creating the probabilities and the possibilities of what we understand as the mental field, the neural network field, using, again, here we're talking lunar technologies, as well as taking over the original vibrational field under the different types of groups that were working as part of the fourth cycle, the reseeding, hence the cross, and changing that one into becoming what we understand as the emotional field, full of all of these emotional patterns which we are working with in psychology and psychotherapy. These are all electrochemical processes, often connected to different forms of alien technologies, artificial programs, and inserted connection devices that are giving us crossover bleed-throughs from different types of alien technology that are put into the fourth dimension. Okay, so that's part of that understanding. So when you're listening to this one and you're listening to, we'll say, well, what's the point of then giving this kind of lecture on these different kind of things? That is, as always, as in kind of, I'm giving you the headlines or the main ideas of what I'm working with. If you want to go into the details, if you want to go into the instructive videos of it, if you want to go into the deeper understanding of what I'm here sharing, you do the whole academy courses. I have taken you by the hand there, leading you in all of the ways into what we call more modernized and original ways of what we're actually supposed to. That's my giving over, because around 2066, I will be dead. And then I'm out. And once I'm out, the New Grand Cycle and the technologies and the original Pillar Project and everything that I was part of with my group and my lineage and the D14 Collective and whatever we've been doing here to try and assist the humanoids, the remnant races of the previous universal cycle under the D13 Collective, our job here is done and over. End of story. So that's why I did the whole academy as in kind of, that's my last attempt from the councils and the D14 Collective and what we have been capable of doing in this time, with this type of civilization, with the different types of alien groups here and onward and so forth. And there are others out there doing their versions and they're giving over, because to be honest, all of us that have the ideas and the understandings of how to work with the energy system, we are now moving towards the transition, and it's not the transition to be here and make this the happiest place in all universal structures. This is the completion cycle. Now we are closing all doors. We are cleaning up our mess. We are deleting all our timelines and connection points. And we will, as everybody else, we are the last group. The first will be the last. You know that one. We are the ones in physical form. And those of us who are in physical form, once we are done here, we will leave as well. And then this sector will be taken over by different groups and races that were not part of this project to begin with at all. That's the process we're in. That's what's going to happen. And it's already happening. It's already in play. And they are chewing their way through the different sectors of our solar system, one by one, bit by bit. So with that understanding, also why the Nagas now have the opportunity to leave, because the fourth cycle is in the process of collapsing. And that means some of the technologies and some of the nodal points and some of the vessels they have been connected to, that's been part of my job, to clear out their library of their bodies and stasis, clear out the technologies and all of this, since the parallel universal matrix are now chewing away, as well as other groups that are coming from the other side of the Orion Collective on the other side of the planet are chewing away that whatever has connected them here and now, the different type of crystal pillars, different type of technologies are now literally crumbling and falling, and that releases them so they are ready to leave through the gate system, which is the natural laws. When you're no longer connected to any physical form or no longer connected to any holographic network or racial grid, because it has been demolished and it ceases to exist, then you will be pushed back into the original reality field you came from, or a similar one. That's the law of the cycles, where you will continue your evolution. And that's one of the reasons why I came back, because I needed to clear out what I had been part of in this project as it began to fall apart. And I had not been able to do it earlier on because of the different groups that were here. But in the 50s, different gate systems opened up, and that allowed me to come from the Andromeda system and enter into this one, which were part of that story of why I am now caught in a physical form and why my original energy system got chopped up and divided by the different ancient groups here. But they understood that with me coming back, they would be, they were trying to revive themselves. And once that didn't happen, well, then we began the cleanup and saying, okay, well, then at least we can leave through the original gate systems. And that's been part of my job as a releaser, not something I chose. I was just here to clean up my own mess. And suddenly I'm here cleaning up everybody else's mess, including my brothers. Okay, so with that understanding, so this is the story of all of us. So we are here to clean up our mess. We are here to release ourselves from the holographic nodal points of the reality field by transforming our energy system. We are here to erase and delete all code streams and timelines and whatever project we've been part of. We are here to upgrade whatever we've got left of viable genetics, and via that upgrade our energy system. And we use information and different types of complex patterns to do so that we reconstruct our energy system with the first goal of course, leaving as part of the middle domains in an energy system with consciousness imbued into it. And if that's not possible, we'll dissolve that one and just leave as raw consciousness units using the gate systems, and then be transferred via what we have achieved and imbued into our consciousness potentials, our original template structure, which is the same as the causal body and the permanent atoms that are part of the highest level of our energy system, will then be pushed out via the gate systems in the orb of energy we have then been able to create from where our original consciousness potentials will be held, which will be used as the traveling agent through the different gate systems. So there are very specific laws regarding this. So keep that in mind when we're talking about why do this when everything's falling apart. Well, it depends on, do you want to go down with the ship or do you want to get the fuck out of here? That's the question. It's not about going home. It's about returning to the regional progression dynamics of the systems that you came from and not being stuck in this dysfunctional business company that is completely falling apart. And this is where we are. This reality is like Twitter. Seriously, completely. It has been bought up by a different kind of group that has a completely different idea of what they want to do with this company. And there is this fleeing of all levels of those of us who can. We are now finding other greener pastures, because the ones that are coming in, they have a different agenda. They want to do something different with this reality than what we came here to do. So at some point, we will no longer be able to exist here anyways. So we might as well just begin that process on our own already. So on page 24, in the beginning of the Psychology of Kundalini Yoga, there is a little bit of talk about what is it and what are the idea of the chakras. And Jung's lectures are principally taken up with providing a modern psychological interpretation of the chakras. And in many ways, you can say, why did I study Jung? Well, perhaps to get some of the basic concepts of some of the things I'm working with, as in, I remember studying the biographies of Jung and what he had experienced as a kind of thumbs up of my approach of reality. I had my own ideas. I had seen things on my own. I had not found any sounding boards within general conceptualization of psychology or what have you. I was just kind of repelled and appalled by it. And then I came across Jung, which were not a coincidence. My grandfather studied Jung, so it was already in our family. So I studied that one to figure out what it was. And as I traveled through the information systems Jung had provided, I eventually ended up with the Psychology of Kundalini Yoga, which naturally, of course, came to me because I was already at that time also studying the material of Bailey. So there is a Hindu guru, and it's a very, very complex name, and I'm not going to say the name because that would be a disservice to this man. But there was this Narendra Nath, and then there is the surname, and I'm not being racial or any ways or any forms. I simply just don't know how to pronounce it. And I'm not very fond when people are writing my name with Randy with a Y instead of an I, or call me something else than what is my birth name. So because I think that's a kind of disrespect. So sending all the bright golden light energies to this guy. I'm not doing any kind of slandering because I can't pronounce his name. It is probably meaning something very beautiful. But Narendra stated that the chakras are best understood through seeing their different components as constituted by a process of historical layering. So, from a historical point of view, it may be suggested that the Padmas, or the chakras, and Padma is the lotus leaves, and that is the one that the Bala material work with. They don't work with chakras as vortices of energy. That's one level of it. They also work with it as Padmas, or leaves of the lotus, which, as long as we are in our beast vessel and as animal males and females, our Padmas, the leaves of our chakras, are facing downwards to desire energies and the processes of the body, instead of rising up off the mud and become this beautiful flower on the top of the lake, where it catches the rays of the sun, where it unfolds as enlightenment. And that's some of the symbology you're seeing on the Buddha as well, where the things he have on his head is not hair. These are all of the little buds of the Padmas of the knowledge of enlightenment that rises up and unfolds into higher understandings of reality. And Padma, the lotus flower, and the understanding of when I talk about the permanent atoms in the causal body, the lotus itself is the causal body. So that's where, when we talk about reaching the highest level of enlightenment, that's where the causal body descends and becomes part of your physical form, because you have cleared and purified your physical form and all of its fields to be able to hold the highest consciousness potential. So that's the understanding of the lotus as well, and the lifting up of the mud and the sediments and all of the slagger of the lake, and becoming this beautiful flower that is able to process the light of the sun, which is in the Bala material seen as the central sun, that is the core sun of our system, and not the physical sun, because we're always dealing with the physical after timeline event solidified reality and the original middle domain density 2, dimension 4 to 6 reality we used to be part of. That's the Garden of Eden, if you want to know that as well. So the chakras were originally conceived of in terms of human anatomy for the purpose of physiological study. At the subsequent stage, in conformity with the tantric ideas that the human body is the microcosm of the universe, worldly objects such as the sun, the moon, the mountains, the rivers, and so forth were connected with these chakras. These are, as I talked about, the elements. And I'll talk about the elements as well when we are dealing, or when I talk about the advanced work with nutrition, as well as the advanced work with the rotundum, where I work with the elements of that are connected to the sun, to the moon, to the earth itself, to water. We are here talking about fire, water, soil, as well as other components. But again, when we need to understand the ancient religions that were what we call heliolunar. They were both worshipping the sun and the moon. So some of these ancient religions, some of these ancient civilizations, as part of the planetary hierarchy, because the planetary hierarchy, if you go with the Bala material, they stated that quite a lot of the ones that founded the planetary hierarchy came from the lunar scheme, and they achieved masterhood, if you can call it that, inside this reality, having completed the different programs where they no longer needed to be in physical form, but could remain as part of the planetary hierarchy, or the Shambhala middle domain Diamond City, as it's also called, where they would reside and where they would assist the rest of us that were still stuck in the solidified matter form, so that we could rise up and get back via the Crystal City, via the Diamond Gates. And I here said the Diamond City or the Crystal Gates or the Crystal City or the Diamond Gates, doesn't matter. You pick yourself what type of terminology you want. It's just that type of energy where you have refined yourself to such a degree that you're no longer the dark coal, the thing that is connected to the abyss and the third cycle energies. You have risen up to the original configuration of the middle domain, where you shine like the rainbow bow body, like the diamond. You have become the refined version of everything you are, transformed everything into its highest carat of purity, from where you can go through the gates of Shambhala, where you go through the different halls of knowledge, of wisdom, of trial, and what have you. These are the initiations that will allow you to get out of the different pocket realities that this world has become part of. And that were part of some of the original developmental programs that my brother created. One of them of the fourth cycle is the cross. The one in the fifth cycle is the pentagram. And the one in the sixth cycle is the hexagram. So there you begin to understand these star configurations have nothing to do with different, you can say Venus has the pentagram and creates the pentagram, or the flower of life, but you also understand that some of these were hijacked and taken over by some of the other civilizations and then distorted and used for a different type of purpose. So we understand this whole idea. When you do the chakra teachings, you understand that you connect to the cosmos via your chakras. That's the foundational ideas, that your entire physical form and energy system is composed of the same type of elements that the rest of the cosmos that you're part of, the interconnectedness. And the only way to become this cosmic being or the cosmic man and no longer be the beast is to transform via different types of techniques, different types of visualization, different types of sounds, and different types of symbols, from where you, via the chakras, would lift yourself up from a lower degree of existence into the original degree of the crystal body, or the crystal energy system, or the diamond body, or whatever terminology you want to use, as part of the one that could leave this system. And that's not what he's saying. This is my interpretation. But each chakra was, and I'm here reading again, each chakra was again thought to represent the gross and the subtle elements, quite in accordance with the tantric idea that the deities reside within the human body, and that the aspirant had to, or the aspiring human has to feel the deity within the body itself. And that's part of the Kala chakra ideas as well. So you understand when you have and I'll resume to that, I'll do the Wikipedia version of the chakras. You will see the original chakra teachings, not the one with the rainbow colors and bullshit, but the original ones had symbols, sound, and a deity. And that is part of each one of the chakras were connected to a deity. And that's where we brought it very, very closely into the archangels that are connected to the medieval interpretation of the Kabbalah as it was done in the Middle Ages in the Western world. So you can see the conflation of the ancient ideas of the East were already transferred into the Kabbalah understanding in the Western world during the Middle Ages, due to trade and due to people that were traveling to India and all places, where they learned these ideas and understanding of that the human body had deities within themselves. And you see remnants of that in the Gospels as well. I'm not saying it's because Jesus went to Tibet and he was taught there and he had studies there, or he was the representative of the planetary hierarchy or what have you. That could be. But he talked about as well that stop giving away your power to some kind of God in a temple performed by the priesthood. I'm here paraphrasing, but find the God within. Because the divinity is in you. You were born with that right. Yahweh, Elohim, put his spirit, his ruach, his breath and revived the man as it is today. Adama was revived or put into life by the Spirit of God, and that is what has kept him going. And of course, we know that is highly biased, as in the female were taken by the side of Adam and then with the second creation, and did not have the divinity directly, but was taken out as a second layer, which led to that we females were subordinate to the male in the Mediterranean or the Jewish context, which is also why I'm not all kind of, oh yeah, arms above my head with that ideology either. Okay, so each chakra, so we have that one, what it was, and then the chakras came to be conceived as the seat of the male and female principles, symbolized by the male and female organs. And we have that a lot in the ancient mythologies and the ancient religious belief systems. These were different. And again, the presiding deities of the chakras were originally tantric goddesses. And that's important. So you kind of understand, okay, so the deities of the chakras were originally goddesses. The theory of the letters of the alphabet symbolizing different tattvas, different types of energy, were also grafted, as in the way we come across the functionality or the functioning of very elaborate and complicated processes within your chakras are supposed to be represented in their transformed capacity. So this is just how it goes with that one. And then you can say, why are these the presiding deities? Why are they female? Because the ones that performed the chakra teachings were males. And you can say the reason why Jung finds this so interesting, and you say either he's looking towards this or he already had some ideas about it himself. He was working with the concepts of the inner man and the inner female, as in the anima and the animus, where he worked with these as when you are a physical male, you have the anima within you that you need to develop and integrate to become a whole human. When you are a female, you need to work with your animus and the shadow being that represents to become a whole human. And you're seeing the same ideas in the chakra teachings where the males, they were only males doing this. Only males doing this. Important to understand that. So therefore, the chakras had to be feminine. So they were deities that they would then merge with which is why the Kundalini Yoga quickly shifted into become sexually oriented, because then the merging was all about the sexual energies and the female energies, and some of these lost their footing and began doing the dark tantric, where they were then taking it a step further and became using these meditative processes as part of what we call actual sexual encounters with females, trying not to get orgasm, try to lift up the Kundalini snake, using sexual encounters, using priestess energies for that one, and all sorts of dark stuff that led to this is not what these teaching systems are all about. So that's also when we talk about Kundalini Yoga and the tantric system. Tantric technically just means a teaching system. But all of this has become what we're seeing also in different forms of yoga forms, in different forms of practitioners within our society today. It's all connected to sexual energies, the energies of the body, which is not to be risen up in sexual orgastic what do you call it, when you go to retreats or in exercises and what have you. That is to amplify the animalistic energy of the nervous system using the chakras, and instead of turning them upright towards the soul, you're then turning them even further using sexual magic and connecting it to the body, from where, yes, you will activate the psychosomatic energies of the body, but they will strongly be connected to underworld creatures that are that rising Kundalini snake, connected to practitioners of tantric sex and tantric sexual oriented Kundalini Yoga. That was never the purpose. That's the dark priesthood type of Kundalini activation. Okay, so with that one, we'll continue the next video.